jungle breathed that night. Warm, damp air pressed against the skin like a living creature as Private Hiroshi Tanaka slid forward through the thick undergrowth. Every movement was deliberate, every breath controlled. His Type 38 rifle felt familiar in his hands. The long bayonet fixed to the muzzle, its steel darkened to avoid reflection. Moonlight filtered weakly through the canopy, barely enough to see the man ahead of him. Around Tanaka, 11 soldiers of the 23rd Infantry Regiment moved silently, perfectly spaced, barely visible. To them, this darkness was not frightening. It was home. For nearly 3 years, Japanese night fighters had dominated the Pacific jungles. They attacked unseen, closed the distance quickly, and killed with steel before the enemy could react. American soldiers feared these moments. The sudden screams, the flash of bayonets, the panic when shadows turned into men. Tanaka remembered his sergeant's words during training. The Americans fear the night. They trust machines, not courage. But we are the night. Somewhere far away, American artillery thundered blindly. Heavy shells tore into empty jungle, exploding uselessly in the darkness. Tanaka almost smiled. The Americans always fired too early, too loudly. Their machines announced fear. The Japanese attack came without warning. Imperial doctrine promised victory at close range. From the first day of training, soldiers were taught that spirit mattered more than firepower. Bayonet drills were endless. Charges were rehearsed until exhaustion. Officers preached that one Japanese soldier, driven by resolve, was worth 10 Western enemies softened by comfort. This was not propaganda meant for civilians. It was doctrine. Official manuals dismissed American troops as mechanical, slow and spiritually weak. Victory would come in darkness, where machines failed and courage ruled. And for a time it worked. In China, bayonet charges shattered resistance. In the Philippines, Allied forces broke under relentless night attacks. At Singapore, tens of thousands surrendered to a smaller, Japanese army that closed in under cover of jungle and night. Every soldier memorized the words of Bushido. The way of the warrior is death. Tanaka believed it completely. Tonight would be no different. The Americans would panic. Steel would meet flesh. The jungle would swallow the bodies as it always had. Then the jungle screamed. Not a rifle crack. Not artillery. Something else. Something impossible. A thunderous roar erupted so close it felt as if Tanaka's skull split apart. Vegetation beside him vanished. Shredded leaves, broken branches, a violent storm of metal and blood. Men did not fall. They came apart. This was not how the night was supposed to sound. And in that instant, everything the Japanese soldier believed about war began to collapse. The men who survived that night did not understand what had happened. They did not speak of rifles or artillery. They spoke of thunder, sudden, overwhelming, and impossibly close. Japanese doctrine had prepared them for bullets, for bayonets, even for grenades. It had not prepared them for a weapon that erased space itself. The first warnings had come months earlier, ignored by commanders who trusted tradition more than reports. August 1942, Guadalcanal. Near the Ilu River, Sergeant Yoshio Takahashi led his platoon forward before dawn. The jungle was quiet, the air heavy with confidence. The attack followed the textbook perfectly. Silent approach, rapid charge, bayonets fixed. Takahashi raised his sword to signal the final rush. Then the darkness exploded. A brutal metallic sound echoed. Chunk chunk. Followed by a roar that rolled through the trees like a storm breaking open. The front ranks vanished. Not fell, vanished. Private Kenji Nakamura, one of only 3 survivors, later wrote in his diary, "The sergeant disappeared. Where he stood was only red mist." Then the thunder spoke again, and another man flew backward like he had been struck by a god. The Americans had introduced something new to the jungle. Pump-action shotguns, Winchester Model 97s, originally designed for hunting birds, now loaded with buckshot. At jungle distances, accuracy no longer mattered. Each trigger pull unleashed a spreading wall of metal. 9 pellets tearing through leaves, bodies and belief itself. Marines fired without pause. The shotgun's slam-fire action allowed shells to be discharged as fast as the weapon could cycle. There was no warning, no chance to dodge, no time for courage to matter. Japanese officers struggled to comprehend the weapon. Early reports dismissed it as unhonorable, insisting that speed and spirit would overcome it. They ordered soldiers to charge faster, strike harder, close the distance. But speed meant nothing when distance itself became lethal. At Bloody Ridge, wave after wave of night attacks collapsed within seconds. Survivors spoke of invisible barriers that shredded entire squads. Medical officers reported wounds they could not explain, multiple entry points, bodies torn open as if struck by artillery at arm's length. Still, High Command resisted the truth. Doctrine did not change easily. To admit failure would mean admitting that years of training, bayonet drills, spiritual conditioning, Bushido, were no longer enough. But the jungle kept teaching its lesson. Each night attack ended the same way. Thunder, screams, silence, and slowly fear replaced faith. The night, once Japan's greatest weapon, was becoming its grave. By mid-1943, the truth could no longer be hidden behind reports or slogans. On New Georgia, veteran Japanese units executed night infiltrations with flawless discipline. These were not inexperienced troops. They were survivors of China, Malaya, and the Philippines, men who had lived by the bayonet and trusted it with their lives. None of it mattered. American Marine lines were no longer thin pickets waiting to be overrun. They were layered kill zones. Shotguns were positioned at choke points along trails beside foxholes. When Japanese troops emerged from the darkness, they were met not by single shots but by storms. Surgeons began to notice something disturbing. These were not clean wounds. Bodies arrived with dozens of small entry holes. Limbs shattered, faces unrecognizable. Medical officers wrote that the injuries resembled artillery strikes, delivered from a few meters away. Statistics were merciless. Against rifle-armed defenders, Japanese night attacks still showed occasional success. Against shotgun-equipped Marines, success collapsed to nearly zero. Casualty rates surged past 80%. Entire platoons ceased to exist within minutes. One company commander wrote privately, "Our attacks no longer serve the Emperor. They only feed the jungle." This was not defeat in battle. It was the destruction of belief. Japanese doctrine had been built on a simple equation. Spiritual strength multiplied combat power. A single soldier driven by Bushido was worth many enemies softened by comfort. This idea had shaped training, tactics, and identity itself. Now it was failing in silence. At Cape Tarokana in Bougainville, the illusion finally died. Hundreds of elite troops advanced under cover of rain and darkness. They moved perfectly, quietly, confidently. At 40 meters, shotgun fire erupted. Men fell in clusters. Survivors described it not as combat but as execution. No lines broke, they were erased. A classified intelligence report delivered to High Command contained words once unthinkable. Enemy firepower has neutralized spiritual superiority. Another officer, breaking with tradition, wrote, "We trained swords against thunder." The realization spread slowly, painfully. The Americans had not beaten Japan through bravery alone. They had done it through logistics, production, and brutal efficiency. While Japanese soldiers drilled bayonet forms for years, American factories produced weapons by the tens of thousands. Ammunition flowed without limit. Training was simple. Replacement was constant. As one Marine commander later admitted, "We didn't outthink them. We outsupplied them." Fear crept into diaries once filled with confidence. Soldiers no longer spoke of glorious death. They spoke of thunder weapons, invisible walls, and nights they could not escape. The jungle had changed, and Japan was no longer its master. By 1944, the transformation was complete. The Japanese soldier who once believed the night belonged to him now feared it. Orders changed quietly, without ceremony. Bayonet charges were no longer encouraged. Close combat was no longer glory, it was death. At Peleliu, the shift was unmistakable. Instead of charging, Japanese troops disappeared into the earth. They carved tunnels into coral ridges, waited in caves, and fought from darkness that no longer invited movement. The doctrine of sudden attack had been replaced by grim endurance. This was not evolution. It was survival. Captured documents revealed the truth plainly. Avoid close combat with American forces at all costs. The sentence would have been unthinkable only 2 years earlier. The Winchester Model 97 had not merely killed men. It had shattered an idea that had defined an army. 6 shells in a magazine, slam-fire capable. At jungle range, precision meant nothing. Spread meant everything. Each shell carried 9 pellets. Fired in seconds, they turned meters into death zones. No courage could cross them. No training could overcome them. While Japanese command spoke of spirit, American command spoke of supply. Factories produced shotguns faster than Japan could train soldiers. Ammunition ships arrived endlessly. A farm boy could be trained in days and achieve what seasoned warriors could not. As one Marine officer later reflected, "We didn't fight mythology. We fought with tools." The psychological damage lingered long after the shooting stopped. Japanese diaries from late war speak of thunder without warning, of comrades erased, of nights filled with terror. The jungle, once a place of dominance, became a place of memory and loss. For the Americans, victory carried its own scars. Marines remembered the screams, the closeness, the brutal efficiency of it all. Shotguns did not allow distance. They made killing intimate. War did not create heroes in those moments. It created survivors, haunted men on both sides, bound by the understanding that modern war does not reward honor or belief. It rewards efficiency. The samurai myth did not die in a final charge or a dramatic stand. It died quietly, in fragments of steel and thunder, scattered through the jungle floor. And long after the war ended, those who had heard that sound knew the truth. The night never belonged to spirit alone. It belonged to whoever controlled the thunder.